Welcome back, everyone, to the O2 Property Podcast. This is episode 3, and today we're diving into something pretty fascinating happening right here in Canberra.
Yeah, it's this weird situation in the rental market. You've got all this data, these reports coming out, painting one picture.
Right. Numbers, charts, statistics.
Exactly. But then you talk to people actually involved, renters looking for places, property managers, and, well, what they're experiencing often feels like the complete opposite.
So that's kind of our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To try and figure out what's going on with the Canberra rental market puzzle.
Precisely. And to do that, we're going to be looking at the latest Q1 reports. These give us the hard data points, things like vacancy rates, asking rents, rental yields, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the usual suspects for sources here, CoreLogic, All Homes, REA. They give us that baseline data picture.
Definitely. But data alone doesn't always tell the full story, does it?
Not always, no.
So while we'll dig into those numbers, we also wanted to bring in some real-world perspective. Later on, we'll be weaving in some insights from Rachel Hooper. She's the business development manager over at Belle Property Canberra.
Yeah, she's got, over 20 years in the Canberra property game?
That's right. So her knowledge, that sort of on-the-ground feel for the market, is just invaluable.
Absolutely. So the big question driving us today is, why does the official data on the Canberra rental market seem so disconnected from the lived experience?
Let's start cracking that open. Where should we begin? Asking rents.
Yeah, let's kick off with median asking rents. The reports are pretty stark here.
They really are. We're talking record highs. For houses, the median asking rent has apparently hit $730 per week.
$730, wow.
And it's a similar story for units, too. Also a record high, $570 per week.
And the data breaks it down even further, right? Saying places like the Inner North and Tuggeranong saw the biggest jumps.
That's what the reports highlight, yeah. Those areas saw the most significant increases in advertised rents.
Okay, so record asking rents. Logically, you'd think properties would be getting snapped up super fast.
You would, wouldn't you? Like, landlords would have queues out the door, multiple applications for every single place.
But this is where that first contradiction pops up.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because what we're hearing, sort of anecdotally, is that, well, that isn't always happening.
Properties aren't necessarily leasing out in 5 minutes.
No, it seems to be taking a bit longer in some cases, which feels weird, right?
It does feel weird. If demand is supposedly so high that it's pushing rents up to these record levels, why wouldn't that translate directly into incredibly fast leasing times across the board? Something doesn't quite mesh.
It really doesn't. And this actually leads us perfectly into the first big question we want to pose to Rachel, drawing on her experience.
Right. So, Rachel, we've got these, record high asking rents on paper. Vacancy rates look low, too, which we'll get to. But on the ground, the story seems different. We're hearing about fewer attendees at inspections, tenants being more selective. So what's really going on behind the scenes there?
Great to be here and thank you for having me. It's a question I get asked all the time at my rental appraisals. My clients are reading in the paper, hearing on the radio, reading, people talking about it at barbecues, that there's these record high asking rents and there's a low vacancy rate. But it's just not what we are seeing at our open homes. We have open homes on a weekend, we do midweek inspections, we mix up the times, but, most of our open homes are having very low numbers. And then a lot of the time when we call those people for feedback the next day, they're either still looking, they might look from one side of town to the other, like they're not just looking in pockets. And I guess what tenants are telling us is that there's a lot of choice for them and they haven't had choice over the last couple of years and they've had to pay high rents and they've had to move when their owners moved back in or sold, and it's all been quite rushed. And now they have a little bit more time, the urgency's not there, and the tenants just have a little bit of choice. And it's a really hard conversation, I guess, for us to have with clients when they're hearing one thing and we're trying to tell them the other. I think a lot of tenants that, moved to Canberra during COVID times have now moved away. So a lot of our clients, when, the tenant vacates, we're having to not be able to achieve that same price. You look at the market and you see in lots of different suburbs that there's new price. That doesn't mean the client's putting the price up. That means we have to adjust the price. That also shows that the market isn't going in an upwards manner. And this is not just from the property management standpoint. A lot of agents that I also talk to agree with me when we're sitting there, chatting about the market, because we're all standing there at open homes and, not having attendees through. We're all saying, why does the market data always seem to reflect differently to what's happened in the market that we're actually seeing day in and day out? And we all feel there's a little bit of a lag between that information. And it's a really hard one for us agents trying to sell, I guess, our services to a new client. So all we say to our clients is, we're happy to try. Like, we will try and achieve the highest price that we can, but they will then see. The market in Canberra talks to us really quickly. And if no one's going to our open homes, no one's applying for the property, then the price is just not where, unfortunately, the owner would like it to be.
That's such a critical point, Rachel. The reports give us one version of the market, but the real test is what happens at the open homes. And if the interest isn't there, the pricing conversation changes quickly. Now, let's pivot, like you said, to vacancy rates.
Okay, vacancy rates.
The reports tell us that the percentage of empty rental properties in Canberra has actually dropped over the last year.
Dropped from what to what?
From 1.6% down to 1.3% year on year.
Okay, 1.3%. On the face of it, that sounds incredibly low.
It does, super low. It suggests really tight competition for renters, doesn't it?
Yeah, fewer available properties, lots of people looking. That usually means things move fast. Classic supply and demand imbalance.
The standard reading of that data point would be, ongoing supply pressure, really strong rental demand in Canberra. Landlord's market, basically.
But then we circle back to those conflicting reports from the ground again.
Exactly. Fewer people showing up to open home.
Tenants taking their sweet time, being pickier about where they live.
It just doesn't quite seem to fit that picture of a frantic, hyper-competitive market where you take whatever you can get, does it?
No, it feels off. Which brings us to another key question for Rachel.
Go for it.
Okay, Rachel, with all this data suggesting it's very much a landlord's market, low vacancy, high rents, why are we hearing that so many properties seem to be taking longer to lease? Is it just that asking prices are maybe misaligned with what tenants are actually willing or able to pay right now? Or is there something else going on?
That misalignment question is a big one. Could pricing be the main factor?
Yes, pricing property misalignment is one of the major factors. For my landlords in the current market, I just suggest present the home the best you can, get good marketing photos, price the property where it needs to be. We look at pre-data to see what has rented that is similar, but also look at what is your direct competition today when we advertise, because that is what tenants are doing. But you also need to look at how long has that property been online for, because sometimes a client will say to me, but mine's the same, it's in the same complex and they're asking for X price, but it could have been on the market for 2 months, it could have been on the market for 3 months. Therefore, tenants aren't seeing value, so it doesn't make your property worth that.
Thank you, Rachel. That explains it. The market is not what it used to be, and there could be a lag in reporting. As much as we would like to believe in reports, nothing trumps the reality on ground. Okay, let's add the next piece. Growth rental yields.
Right, the returns for investors. The data suggests yields have actually crept up slightly.
And that's mainly because of those rising rents we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the maths works out that way. As rents go up, assuming purchase prices don't climb quite as fast, the yield improves.
So what are the actual figures looking like?
Currently, the reports are putting gross rental yields at around 4.5% for houses in Canberra.
And units, usually a bit higher.
Yep, slightly better at 5.1% for units.
Okay, 4.5% and 5.1%. In the investment world, what does that generally signal?
Well, typically, those sorts of numbers look reasonably attractive for investors. It suggests a decent return on their capital.
So it could act as quite a strong incentive, potentially, for people to buy investment properties to rent out.
Potentially, yes. Higher yields often encourage investment in the rental market.
All right. So let's try and pull all this data together for a moment, just based purely on these reports. What's the picture?
If you just look at the numbers in isolation.
Yeah. Ignore the on-the-ground stuff for a second.
Okay. Well, the numbers suggest a market where tenants face fewer choices.
And those choices are more expensive. Record high rents.
Definitely a squeeze on tenants, according to the data.
And what about landlords? What does it imply for them?
It probably implies or suggests increased pressure to maintain or even improve property quality.
Right. Because if tenants are paying top dollar,
their expectations go up. They'll want value for money, good condition, quick repairs, all that.
Makes sense. And overall, the data paints this picture of a market that Well, it seems to favor landlords with good quality, well-managed properties.
Especially investment-grade stock in desirable spots. Theoretically, those landlords should be doing pretty well, attracting tenants, getting good returns.
Theoretically. But, as we've kept saying, that's where the data-driven view bumps up against the anecdotal evidence.
That clash, what people are actually seeing and feeling day to day in the market.
And that's why getting those insights is so crucial. It's about understanding why there's this apparent gap.
What could this mean for the Canberra rental landscape going forward?
Rachel, and what advice would you have for tenants?
For tenants, I would just say, give honest feedback to the agent. When they ask you for feedback, give feedback. If you've seen one that's similar, that has recently rented for $20 a week less, just tell us that. If you aren't interested in the property and if you think, if I was approved for this property, do I want to live there? And the answer is no, just don't apply. Don't waste your time, your references' time. Just apply for the properties that you're looking for. And also reach out to the agent. Let us know what you're looking for. We are here to help, and we do rent a lot of properties that, are off market if you have just rented one, and we do have a good application. So, in a market like this, sometimes tenants don't want to book the agent because they have so much choice. And when the market is tighter, tenants want to talk to us and they want to be on our books and they want to be, top of mind if something comes up. Just do the same thing now, because we're all here to help. We want to get a great result. We want to give you a good home. We want to give a tenant, a nice place to live. So just work with the agent and just give us honest feedback, because that's the feedback that we give the client. And at the end of the day, we all want to get the same result of getting that property rented.
Rachel, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for calling it like it is. In an industry where it's easy to spin a story, your honesty is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for joining us, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.